Distinct privilege to introduce our commencement speaker this morning, Mr. Gaebelein. Not only is Mr. Gaebelein a 1971 graduate of Harbor Country Day, but he's the most fascinating head of school I know. Mr. Gaebelein was an assault helicopter pilot in the 101st Air Assault Division, flying, among other many types of helicopters, a Black Hawk. He was also a rifle platoon leader, an anti-TAC platoon leader, and a rifle company officer seeing active duty worldwide. In stark contrast to this, Mr. Gaebelein has written 2 books, is working on his 3rd, is a lecturer, historian, public speaker, and the head of school for 2 schools, including Stony Brook School and the Knox School. You know the saying that you want a special person in your foxhole? Well, Mr. Gaebelein is the person I want in my foxhole, both literally and figuratively. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Gaebelein, a member of the Harbor Country Day School class of 1971, back to his elementary roots. Mr. Gaebelein.
Thank you so much for the invitation to come here. I really do appreciate it. Every time I come to Harbor Country Day, the memories literally flood back. But I also want to say thank you for these 3, for what you said. You guys are a tough act to follow. Anyway, my remarks this morning I hope are brief. I want to do 2 things. Number 1, I want to pose a question to answer. And number 2, give some advice. When you're older, you get to give advice. But anyway, the question, as an educator, an administrator in private independent schools just like this one, these schools cost money. They cost lots of money. There's big tuition checks to write. There's annual fund gifts to make. Good things cost. That's just a reality. And I'm often asked by parents, other people, professionals, is that money worth it? Are those tuition checks worth it? After all, this area is supposed to have great, nice public schools and this and that. But that is a fair question. Is all that tuition dollars worth it? Because you as parents have to make incredible sacrifices for this. So, in answering that question, I would go back to my own life story. I still remember the day like it was yesterday that my father, in 1967, brought me through the front door of Harbor Country Day as a new entering, scared out of my mind 4th grader. He says, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go here because it's better. Back then we didn't argue with that. And he brought me through, and I will say, from personal experience, this is where I learned grammar. I learned to diagram a sentence. I learned to conjugate verbs. I learned a second language. I learned math. I learned fractions. I got the foundations and the base to go on that was irreplaceable. Additionally, I had superior teachers here. Mr. Bussing, 4th grade teacher, outstanding. Grilled in the fundamentals to us. Mr. Hitchcock, then the headmaster, whom I met when I first came through the doors with my father, was also my history teacher. He was fantastic. He inspired me. He regaled me with stories of history. And one summer, as we were going home for the summer, he took such an interest in me, like all the teachers did here. He gave me a book about airplanes in World War II. Thought I might be interested in it. I took that book home that summer and literally devoured it. And then started reading all kinds of things about World War II and history and things like that. He inspired me to learn more. He created in me, with as well as the other teachers, a lifelong love of learning. So not only were the strong fundamentals put in place, because you have to know where to put commas, you have to know where to capitalize words, you have to know what your multiplication tables are, you have to know fractions and percentages. That foundation was solid, combined with a lifelong love of learning, took me far in this world. I'm also asked by parents, well, where should we spend the money when we want to spend the money on our children to go to school? Do we spend it in college? Do we spend it in secondary school? Do we spend it in the elementary years? Spend it here. Spend it here. Because this is where the foundations are laid. And if the foundation is not laid, anything you try and build on it is a waste of time. I was given an incredible foundation at this school. I read in the front of this Harbor's mission. Harbor cherishes childhood, cultivates wonder, and inspires confident learners and leaders. That is true. That was true in 1967 for me, and it is very evident it is true in 2014 for what you just saw earlier. That is the mark of a great institution, that it stays true to its excellence and its mission. And that was what Harbor did for me. I thank my father every day for yanking me through that front door, even though I didn't want to come. And I am eternally grateful for him, because I had a teacher like Arthur Hitchcock, who gave me that love of learning. I would go on later to become a professor of history at the United States Military Academy. I don't get there unless it's done here. Things don't happen unless it happens early, because those are the foundations that are built. And I see that happening at this school, and it's a joy in my heart. And the memories make the memories so much richer. Now, so in answering that question for you parents that have had to write the big checks, is it worth it? You bet it is. Every penny of it that you donate or write or whatever to this school, because that is good money, and that's going to a good thing, the most precious thing you have, your children, and the proof is right here in front of you. Second thing I wanted to say was a word of advice. And like I said, when you're older at this stage of life, you get to do that. The best advice, well, Joe was already onto it when he said people can be smart and talented, but it essentially means nothing without character. And Joe pointed out one huge aspect of character, which is determination, and he is 100% correct. And that's what Harbor had instilled in me, especially in that motto, without work, nothing. There is determination as part of it. But I would also offer this to the young graduating class. I think a lot of wisdom has already been said. It's been said thousands of years ago, and all we do is rediscover the wisdom of the ancients. An ancient prophet in Israel, almost 3,000 years ago, was one of the favorites I love to read. It was the prophet Micah in a tumultuous time in Israel, when there was chaos all around. People didn't know what to do or whatever. And after a long time, he basically came up with a very brief saying. Two individuals that I think are the best guideposts to right living that I can think of. When he was confronted with people, what should we do? How should we live? He basically said in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, and quote, "And what does the Lord require of you, but to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God?" Acting justly is your honor, your integrity, doing the right thing. Loving mercy is respect and civility and compassion that you show to others along the way. And walking humbly, keeping our big egos in check, putting other people first and being humble, that is key. And I think that verse sums it up best. If you have to remember anything, when we walk out of this room today, Micah 6:8, act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. And that will take you very far in life, especially with the foundation that you were given here today, and be appreciative of your parents for it. Thank you, and Godspeed.